Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, January the 16th, and it has warmed up where I am, so we're no longer in the minus a bajillion degrees Celsius, which we had been for a while there, longer than I like, but we've warmed up, so that's nice. I'm enjoying the fact that it's warmer and you don't have to bundle up like a wingnut to go outside to do anything. So that's been great. Weather forecast says there's a couple of chillier days coming this week, during the week, but we'll warm up again on the weekend. So that was great. I did have a check to see whether we could film in the sunroom, and it's just, the interesting thing is it's just not quite sunny enough. I need one of those gloriously, fabulously sunny days for that room to warm up nicely. So did have a concept in there, but not quite yet. So we're back here for now. Thank you for all of the comments on last week's video. That was really great. Got a comment back from Anna who appreciated the shout out. So thanks back to you. It's always nice. Northern Spain is represented in watching. And then there is someone from Norway who commented, and I would really love to pronounce your YouTube name, but my Norwegian is like none, and I'm really sorry, but I looked at it and I just went, I have no hope of even remotely getting this right. But thank you so much for your comment, and thanks for watching from Norway. That's, I feel like I'm almost at the point where I need to, start keeping a global map and tracking where I've got people who've reported in from. But so Spain and Norway are represented, and I think that's awesome. So thank you so much. All right. Thank you for the lovely comments on the Remember piece. Now that it is got its charm attached and all that kind of stuff, I really enjoy how that piece looks. I'm so glad that I put it into the stitching plan for last year and got it all completed. So that's great. Hopefully this year we will get that into a fully finished object, so my plans for that can really come to fruition, so that would be great too. But thank you for the comments. As always, if you are a new viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. And as always, if you are a returning viewer, I truly appreciate those of you who come back faithfully on a regular basis and watch my videos, to watch my stitching activities. And as always, if you have any comments or questions or topics you would like me to address, always like to have those, because then I feel like we're having a bit of a conversation. So I did get a question from Lena about using the color chart. It's a good question. I'm going to talk about that next week. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully that doesn't derail your plans for what you're trying to accomplish this week. But I wanted to make sure I had really plotted out exactly what I wanted to say about that. And I think next week will be a good week to talk about that. So Lena, I have not forgotten your question, but I will be talking about how I use the color chart and what I do with it, and how I approach using it on a variety of things. Because I laughed because I was doing something last week where so my color chart resides in the drawers beside me, my stitching spot, and I laughed because there have been several moments this week where I've had to reach over, pull out the drawer, haul out the color chart, and have a look at something. So thank you for the question. I'm not ignoring you, but let's talk about that next week so that I can have a good, fulsome discussion on what I do with that. The Starlit Stitcher had a really good comment about, I really want to call it like stash goals for a year, which I thought is a really good concept. We all talk about the things that we want to stitch on and all those things. Her comment was a little bit about having some stash goals, about maybe being a little more restrained on kitting up, but acquiring charts. I have some secret stash goals, and we'll talk about that in 2 weeks from now. So the very last week in January. I'll be talking about that. But I think that's also another great way to look at it, about what are your stash goals? Do you have some? And really, part of her kitting up things, particularly after I'd made the comment about getting the specialty things when you get that chart. So she's getting ready to kit up the Christmas Eve Courier series from Nora Corbett, which, yep, that can be costly. Man, those treasures, they add up, and for a really small design piece, there are a ton of beads and treasures that go on that. So I totally get that. My only advice to you on that would be, one of the things that I do is I try to keep track of when stores that I shop from, whether they're online or in person, have sales. So that's just one of those things where I kind of sort of have paid enough attention over the years where I go, ooh, they normally have a sale around here or around there or about this topic or whatever. Anniversaries, birthdays, you know, some of them have like Super Bowl sales and all that kind of stuff. So sort of monitoring that and actually remembering when those are likely to come up can also help towards kitting up some of those pieces that are more expensive. As well, I would like to thank those of you who sent messages saying how excited they were to hear EJ comment about watching me, so that was really nice. So it's nice to know that you too get excited when Flosstube celebrities sort of mention others of us. And yeah, so that was pretty exciting. Thanks for the messages, and thanks to EJ because she commented on last week's video, so that was great too. So a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight. The Nashville Needlework Market is coming up in the first part of March. There are some of the designers are starting to do sneak peeks. I don't remember who it was, but I think one of the designers that I follow on Instagram actually showed, here is my first full reveal for Nashville. And I had that moment this week where I'm like, oh, it's coming up. It's coming up. So my advice for people who are don't necessarily know what's going on at Nashville. Nashville is a big needlework market where lots of designers do larger releases. Lots of designers do periodic releases over the course of the year, which is great, but Nashville tends to be one where they sort of have sort of a bigger chunk of releases coming out, and it's always very exciting to see what's being released and what's going on there. So Nashville's coming, so start paying attention to what designers are sneak peeking and revealing and all that kind of stuff. And again, my advice to you is, if you've got favorite designers, make sure you're following them on Instagram, because that's usually where they'll be sort of doing some posting. There's several of the stores that I get newsletters from where they always they do Nashville pages where they put the releases from Nashville on there specifically so that people can see what's being newly released. So I keep track of those. Nashville, it's coming. Isn't that exciting? And then the other item that I wanted to highlight, I know when we were talking about tools in a video from last year, that I showed my Tacky Bob, but I said that Tacky Bobs had been discontinued and you couldn't get them anymore and all that kind of stuff. And Tacky Bobs have been discontinued. However, they have come back under a new name, so don't know whether somebody bought it or who knows what's going on behind the scenes. My answer is I don't really care. They're back. And they're called, so this is my Tacky Bob. So it's just a small little case. This is smaller than a CD case, and inside are sort of 2 strips of tacky material for you to place your beads on. And they come with a variety of designs and all that kind of stuff. So they have come back. They are now called Tacky Bills. So Bob is now Bill, but they are back on the market. I know, I think Traditional Stitches is bringing them in. I don't know if they've arrived to the shop yet, but I know that they do have them on their website, and I will put a link to that. You can also check your Needlework shop if they are bringing them in or if they can order them in for you. But they are coming back, but they are now under the name of, they are no longer Tacky Bobs, they are Tacky Bills. So I was actually very excited when I saw that, because once something's been discontinued, I get my spidey senses, you know, sort of going, oh my goodness, wait a minute, what happens if something happens? So now that they're coming back as a Tacky Bill, I might have to buy an extra one to put into the stash just in case the couple of Tacky Bobs that I use, something happens to one of them. It's always good to have a spare. All right, and with that, let's get into my stitching for this week. Let's start off with my my big carryover piece from last year. Just looking at my things going, I probably should have had this set up in advance, but there it is. The Temperature Tree by Sarah Hughes, Stitchin' Mommy on Etsy. So this is, despite that there are lots of people that have started all new temperature things this year, this is, I'm still working on my 2021 temperature tree because, you know, I got waylaid by my cocoa bean brown issues, but we've sorted that out. See, and it's funny, when you look at it here, I feel like this is starting to look quite a bit darker, and the answer is tough luck. We're going. I'm just going to put that cocoa bean in the middle, and hopefully by the time we get the rest of the leaves on, it'll all work out in the end. I'm still going, it's going to be fine. So what did I get accomplished this week? So I finished filling out all of the leaves on the July and August branches, and I put in the September branch. No leaves on there yet, but I got the branch in. So the goal for this week is we'll leaf this one up. Again, as I was looking at this, so this is the June branch. See, there's 3 green leaves in there. So 3 green leaves mean 3 days that were sort of between 12 and 18 degrees Celsius. And way over here on my August, there's 3 green leaves. Everything other than that, look at those reds and oranges and numbers that make me mostly happy, except for the very, very dark reds. Like that one. That was an unpleasantly hot day. That was like 37 degrees Celsius, which is, you know, unpleasantly hot. Particularly when you don't have air conditioning, which I don't have. It's okay, I slept in the basement, it was fine. But I look at that and go, ugh, generally lovely summer. So it's coming along, making progress on that steadily every week, which is great. So it's on track to get finished in a not inordinately long period of time. So that's good. Just looking around me going, where am I going to put these things? Okay. Then, so last week I finished my first, well, one of my New Year New Starts, which was the January cottage from Country Cottage Needleworks, and I had that completely stitched up last week. So this week, according to my plan, I will go from something new to a whip. And so I spent the rest of this week, so between doing my regular Sunday stitching, which we'll do next, working on my temperature tree, I hauled out a whip. And so the whip that I focused on this week, let me haul out the big picture, is the Banquet. It's a canvas piece that I started last year from Freda's Fancy Stitching, which at the end of the day is going to end up looking like this. So this is a series of 8 charts, and where I finished off last year was I did the first 4 charts. So I had parts 1 through 4 done, so I have 4 left to go. It's been a good week. Yes, that's why I had the board out. I was going to hold it up behind the canvas. So here we are, this is where we're at now. So I have finished both part 5 and part 6. Let's see, can't hold this in a slightly better fashion. So the last time you saw this, I had sort of up to here done, and this block over here. So everything below here, that's what I've accomplished this week. So I was happy with my progress this week. Figured 2 charts in 1 week was a pretty good go. The interesting thing is, I will say, I like how like this block and this block look now that they're complete. I didn't love stitching them. It's interesting to me. It's some of the specialty stitches where I go like this, to me this is a very dense stitch, as is this one. This series of eyelets and Smyrnas is a very dense stitch, and so even though a lot of canvas work projects are all about, you know, covering your canvas, you know, like all of these blocks are covering the canvas, some of them are denser stitches, and these were pretty dense stitches, and I was like going, they weren't my favorite blocks to stitch. I like how they look at the end now that they're done, but I didn't necessarily enjoy the journey. It's my whole thing. I'm not always a necessarily love all the parts of the journey, but I love the outcomes. To me, it's a lot like cooking. I don't necessarily love cooking. I don't hate cooking. I don't love cooking. I usually just like the outcome of the process. I loved stitching this block. I thought that was fantastic. This one is probably really hard to tell, but those little dots you see, those are beads. Hold out my silk lame braid. So it was, again, as I was stitching on it this week, I was reminding myself going, one of my goals that I learned from 2021 is that I always want to make sure that sort of over the course of a year that I do spend some time working on a canvas piece. Not that it needs to come up on a super regular basis. So like in 2021, I only worked on this piece in February. I probably would like to work on canvas work more than, you know, once per year for a chunk. When I stitched on this, it reminded me going, yeah, no, that's a good goal. It's, for me, one of my goals for my 5-year stitching plan is to make sure that I've always got some canvas work that's going on and is part of my whips that I'm working on. So I feel like I've made really great progress on this. Part of the things that I learned this week is when you have that big a gap, you forget some of the things you know when you're stitching. So I found, and again, because part of these things were some pretty dense stitching areas, and I found that it was harder on my hands than I remembered. But then of course I think back to February of last year, and I remember I wasn't spending like solidly all of my time on the canvas work piece because I was still working on the Never-Ending Nativity, right? So I had some breaks in there. So one of the things that I had to remind myself of is that and again, because part of it was some fairly dense stitching, is that I need to give my hands a little bit of a break, and also partly because I forgot some of my stitching tools. And when they started to hurt, I kind of went, this is unusual for me, and then I forgot that I had my things. So I hauled them out just because I want to highlight them again. Sorry, I left the piece of paper in the plastic bag because it was really hard to get out. So these are called needle pullers from Loran. So this is sort of what the package looks like. They come as a package of 2. And the picture on here shows them using one. So here are the 2, so 2 different sizes, a bigger and a smaller one. And quite frankly, because I forgot to start using them earlier in my canvas work, I ended up using them as a pair. So I used the bigger one on my thumb and the smaller one goes on my index, and I pull from there. Made a huge difference as soon as I sort of went, wait a minute, you have tools that you use when you're doing this that help. As soon as I put them on, my finger was feeling better. But even today, I would say I can still, if I push down particularly on my index finger, I can feel it where I go, yep, that's because you spent those original probably 3 days where you forgot to haul out your stitching tools. So these are really great. It's a reminder to myself, should probably work on the canvas work a little more regularly so I don't forget these things. And then I went, because it made such a difference, I was like, you should probably get a spare pair or two. So I will confess I'm planning on ordering a couple more pairs of these. Traditional Stitches actually has them on sale right now. I will say, sadly for you, by the time this video gets up, I will have already placed my order, so I can add another 2 packages of these to my stash. But yeah, they hugely changed how my fingers felt after working on the canvas work. So with that, yeah, so happy with my progress. So this, I've now done my whip for this week, and in fact, I think I got further than I thought I was going to get. I really felt like I was only going to get probably chart 5 done, as opposed to, but I actually got 5 and 6 done. So I felt that that was really great progress for this week on this whip. So this whip is going away again. Stay tuned for when it's going to come back out. But yes, it confirmed that I enjoy working on it. I enjoy having some canvas work in the process. The other tool that I ended up using, I talked about this when I got it, that when I was originally going through my tools, a friend of mine had noted that I did not have, and again, this is also a needle grip related item. So this is, I think they're called hemostats by non-stitching people. So this, the packaging for this looks like this, and it's called needle grippers. So again, so this is the packaging. I got mine from Traditional Stitches. This is what they look like. You know, they're not that complicated. Attach, pull, and pull your needle. And it really did pay off again in those areas where there were really dense stitches. I was actually really glad that I had this, and I used it quite regularly as I was working on those. So I'm glad I followed my friend's advice. I'm glad that I've added these to my stash because these were fantastic. And will be coming out the next time I work on canvas work. The other thing I wanted to talk about, not that anybody is necessarily going to care as much as me, but the called for metallic fiber in this particular chart is a number 8 Krynic in color 086C. There is an alternative that's listed in the chart because 086C has been discontinued. And so up here, I went with the alternate color, which is silver, and it's fine. But as I got down here, where it's being used in the center of this block and in the center of this one, I was not as happy with it. Now, I have 086C in a number 4, not a number 8. So I know what the color was, and from the time that I started stitching this in February of last year, I have tried looking at Rainbow Gallery options, you know, some of the suggested alternatives provided by both Krynic and other people out there. And my real answer is I really like the 86C better. So in this block, I did use my number 4 braid. The number 8 braid would give it slightly better coverage, but I figured it was not sufficient for me to hold back because I liked the color better, particularly in this block. And again, it's actually used as a continental stitch just to sort of fill out the centers of these Jessica stitches, well, partial Jessica stitches. And same thing. It's not that the silver would be bad, but I liked the 86C better. So for me, even though the chart calls for a number 8 braid, so far I am using a number 4 braid. Here I used 1 strand. I will say that for the continental stitches I used 2. My plan is, when I come back to this, now that I've put it in these other spots, I am going to come back and I'm going to rip this out and restitch this with the number 4 braid, and whether I end up putting it in with 1 strand or 2 strands will be an evaluation at that point in time. We'll have to see. It's a much bigger area. It's a little more open with this Jessica stitch, so I'll have to play that one by ear when I go to do that, but my plan is to actually rip this out and restitch it with the 86C only in a number 4. But yeah, so I feel like I've made good progress this week. Very happy with that. It's going away. I just also wanted to highlight, you know, I talked last week about my the bags that I'm using. So here is that same size. So this is the smaller size, but in this bag, it is enough where I can fit all of those pearl cottons and Caron watercolors, and I've got some pearl cotton balls in here, and 8 charts, and etc. etc. It's opened at the moment because I need to put something back in there. This is a reminder to me to put something back in here before it goes away. But again, so all of that fits in that A4 size bag that I referenced last week. In case you were wondering, if you were looking in the notes section for last week about those particular ones, I sort of put the description of them so you could search for them, but I will say I did not put a specific link to them in Amazon because the links that I had, the prices were dramatically more expensive than the ones when I bought them. And again, this is, you know, keep your eye out for a deal. I certainly know that when I got a package of 35 of them for a ridiculously reasonable price. And I remember talking to a friend of mine where I said, like, the price for 15 of those bags versus the price for 35 of them was $8 different in Canadian dollars. And I was like going, so of course I had to get 35 of them as opposed to 15 because it just didn't make sense. And now that I've got a 5-year stitching plan, I'm even more grateful that I bought the 35 of them because a lot of them have actually gone into the planning baskets and all that kind of stuff. So do some price comparisons, shop around, see what's going on. If you're not desperate for them, the other thing is to wait for a bit and periodically check in with Amazon because, like I say, I had that one day where I was on Amazon and it popped up that those the sticky board in the larger sizes were on for some ridiculous price. Yeah, so you just never know where you're going to be able to get a deal on Amazon. So if you're not in desperate and you look at that price going like, wow, those don't look nearly as economical as Judy sort of implied, don't worry. If you've got the time, you can wait for a bit. I'm having that moment going, I feel like the light's changing on me again. All right. So the third piece that I worked on this week was, of course, the sampler of stitches, which is my stitch along that I'm working on this year, which was all started by, again, Stitch and Mommy. So this is what the piece is supposed to theoretically look like at the end, a series of 9 charts. So where did I get to this week? Well, a little bit of a chuckle. So here's where I got to. if you'll notice, I did not finish my acorn. I still have not decided on my yellow. I was going back and I was looking at the charts, and I was looking at where the second yellow is being used, which is for the letter Q. And I was looking at the options that I had pulled, and I feel like I need to make an adjustment. So I need to track down a couple of options and see who's got them in stock and look at them. But again, I think in totality, which I should be able to tell because I've got the chart right here. There's about 6 or 7 satin stitches. Sorry, I'm just gonna turn on another light here because I just, like, something's going on with the lighting. I'm not happy with it. So there's only about 6 or 7 stitches here to do, which will take me, what, 2.5 minutes to get in once I make my decision. So I'm not worried that I have not completely finished A and I've moved on. I'm totally fine with that. The other decision that I've made is my Soie Perlé. So I did end up going with the darker color, which I think is 415, but I will put that in the notes below. Just because the lighter one just didn't provide enough contrast so that you could actually see the specialty stitch. And that's the driver behind that. Again, as we go through the rest of these charts and the rest of the specialty stitches, I could easily use the lighter one for other versions of this. So at the end of the day, I may end up using more colors than are originally charted, but stay tuned. So I finished off the little bit of mostly A, other than those satin stitches, and moved along into B. So I got my letter B accomplished and did the basket beside it. Now, I will say I've made this comment before that the charts that I have are sort of from the original print run. Like, they had notes on them saying, we can't tell you how much you will need of any color because we haven't finished stitching this yet. But a friend of mine who, again, one of the local needlework shops at the time actually did run a class, and a friend of mine was in that. And she made a comment to me when I was getting ready to start this, where she said, just make sure that you compare some of the stitch diagrams to what's in the chart because they don't necessarily align. And I've already encountered one of those examples. So if you've got a newer chart, I don't know, like if you've bought it recently, I know that there's sort of an updated version of those that are out there. I don't know if the same, if it's still occurring in the current versions or not. But, so in the center of this basket is a basket weave stitch. Sort of really, it's just along in the center here. Yeah, like about there, in there. And I will say, when in the chart you have, there's a series of diagrams that you get. They're sort of, I don't know how to show this nice. Like, there's this page which sort of gives you how the 9 charts fit together. Then you've got a more detailed one that says, here's what we're doing for the current letters. So in this case, A, B, C, which is then followed by stitch diagrams. So in my version of this chart, for the basket weave stitch, the stitch diagram chart does not correspond to the main chart for that stitch. And the difference is the horizontal stitches in the stitch diagram are shown being stitched over 4 threads, but on the main chart, it is only stitched over 2 fiber threads. So again, I can't speak to if you've gotten it more recently, if that's been corrected or not. But for me, the main diagram is dictating what I'm doing. And so that's where I noticed that discrepancy and made the adjustment a friend of mine sort of said, well, you could have done it with the other one. And I said, well, in this case, I would actually highly recommend you not follow the stitch diagram accurately, particularly on those horizontal stitches. The vertical stitches are fine. The horizontal stitches do not correspond. And the reason why I would go with the main diagram is because that makes the basket look like a basket. If you actually did it the way the stitch diagram does, your basket weave stitch would extend out further on the sides of the basket. So I'm sticking with the main diagram, even if the stitch diagram doesn't necessarily agree with that, and making the adjustments. So far that is the only instance that I have encountered so far. We're fairly early on into this process. Because I can't help myself, I did a little spreadsheet to track on the number of specialty stitches. So I think someone had made a comment that I had read where it was like 140 some. According to what I've got so far, there's 133. Based on the stitching that I've done to date, I am 2.26% of my way through the specialty stitches by week 3, by January 16th of 2022. But the good thing is I am really keeping up with this particular sal purely by stitching it on Sundays. So again, so my task for this week, technically this is the first week that I should be stitching on B, so I feel like I'm ahead of the game. And looking at the specialty stitches that I should be working on tonight, B should easily be accomplished tonight, which means I will then start on C anyway and spend some more time stitching on this. So far it's going really well, which is great. This is a chart where there are beads that are going in here for the center of these flowers in this basket. There's also a button that came as part of my chart. Sorry, I need to, doesn't that look lovely? I think that's great. Anyway, it's coming along fabulously well. I'm loving the colors that I'm doing. I am going to put all of the beads and the buttons and the charms on at the very, very end. I have this on a scroll rod. So I'm just going to plan on doing them at the end. You know, so far in this chart, well, I don't know, I haven't hit the bottom. So here there's 4 beads, and I know that over here there's going to be 1 button. So far we're up to 5, and I think I'll be able to handle that at the end, no problem, and still get this finished within the year, because I feel like I'm making really reasonable progress. And again, it's not sucking up a huge amount of time. It's not causing me any issues. So I think it's fantastic. Thank you, Sarah, so much for coming up with this sal, because I'm working on this design. It's coming together. I'm thrilled with all of this. My first actual stitch along that I'm honestly doing the stitch along, and it's working out really well for me so far. So I think that's great. Loving how this is coming together. Yes, I need to finally decide on my yellow. Stay tuned. Maybe next week I'll have a decision on that one. Yes, yet another week where I've procrastinated making a decision on yellow, and I've ignored those 7 satin stitches. So that is my stitching for this week. Again, I feel like it's been a pretty good week, fairly productive. Like I say, sorry, somebody's out scraping something outside. You know, 2 charts from the Banquet stitched in their entirety, so I feel like that's a really productive week, which of course means this week I will be doing something different. So I will be working on something new, so stay tuned for next week and see what that is. Stitching on my sampler of stitches, working on my temperature tree, and working on something new. So I think that's great. So far, my year and my plans for 2022 are working out really well. Yeah, I know, I probably just jinxed myself because we are on like week 3, but I'm ignoring that part. All right, moving along to Stashquisitions. So the funny thing is, as this was uploading last week and I was doing up the notes, I had this horrible sinking feeling because I sort of carry the notes forward from the previous week, pull it forward, add things, change things, whatever. And I got to the Stashquisitions and I went, ooh, I forgot somebody. So I did get a gift last week from a friend of mine, my Christmas/birthday present, which I did not show. And so I phoned her and said, hopefully I've reached you before you have time to watch my video. I'm really, really sorry I forgot to mention your gifts. Sorry about that. I really did appreciate them, but I forgot because in my head I was thinking Stashquisitions and I hadn't shopped for anything. But I did get a gift last week. So I got two things. One, she very graciously gave me a gift certificate to my local needlework shop, specifically so that I could do some shopping for Nashville. So that was great. So thank you very much for that. Truly, truly appreciate that. We'll see what happens. I will say secretly in my head, I'm hoping that in the designs that come out for Nashville, that there are a lot of gnomes and mermaids and goats and chickens and farm animals and I don't know what else to put in there. So really it's the things that appeal to lots of people but don't necessarily appeal to me. Because I've looked at my stash and went, you've got quite a bit of stitching in there. But thank you for the gift certificate because you just never know how I'm going to use that up. And also got this Gloria and Excelsis from Erica Michael's Caroling Berries series, which is great. So she's got a series of berries that are all set around Christmas carols. And I've looked at them and I've looked at them and I've looked at them. I haven't got, this is the first one of that series that I have now in my stash. Not exactly sure where this is necessarily going to fit into the 5-year plan, but I'm really glad that I've got it because everybody tells me that these are a really quick stitch and really reasonable to finish. So you just never know when this is going to show up. So thank you so much to my friend for, that was a great birthday/Christmas gift. I truly appreciate it. And as I spend that gift certificate, you will get to see what I shop with that. Just had a moment there shopping. There was something that I was going to say, but I've lost it. Plans. There we go. Plans. So far, my rotation plan and the things that I have planned on working on is going really well. I will say a couple of things have come up over the past 10 days. I'm probably going to be adding a few more starts into my plan for 2022. I'm hoping one of those starts probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I've got to check on some items that are required for it and see what I've got. And if I don't have them, I'll have to order those, and then we'll see how long that takes. So yes, I've had to, I've made the decision that I'm adding a few more things into the stitching plans for this year, and I'm very happy with those decisions. And when I start those, you'll see them. But plans, they are changing somewhat. So sort of over those last 10 days, there are 2 new starts that I am adding into my plan for 2022. One of them, I'm pretty sure I know what it's going to be. One of them, I have yet to make the decision, but I have already picked the day when it's going to be started. I know, all very cryptic. All right, and with that, let's get into the topic for this week, which is let's talk about the drawn thread. And again, so because on January 1st, I had 2 new starts, and I always like to, when I have new starts, I like to do a designer focus. So last week we focused on Country Cottage Needleworks because that was one of my new starts. The second new start, of course, was the sampler stitches for the Sal by the Drawn Thread. So this week's topic is let's talk about the Drawn Thread and some of their charts that I have in my stash. Just having a moment going, yes, okay, the pile over here is doing well. So this one is called Perennial Border. I love this. So a very colorful floral border and then white work done in the center. I will say that on several of these, particularly the ones that are related to gardens and flowers, the number of colors that are used in that design is fairly extensive. So for example, in this one, there's 31 different colors called for from a variety of different providers. The stitch count on this is 106 by 106, so it's not, you know, horribly large, which is why the, you know, 30 some colors sort of go, it's more than you think. But there's that one. That one's pretty high up on my list of when I next work on another drawn thread. This one's probably going to be the next one up in the rotation. This one is called Little Bits of Christmas. So this is a series of blocks which you can either sort of put together as sort of a larger motif, or you can put them together, you can arrange them vertically or horizontally, or you can stitch one as an ornament. So I love the optionality of this because each of these blocks are essentially the same size, which is why you can combine them in any combination that you want. Of course, the center one in this one, because it says Christmas, like it's the largest of all of them. But again, the bits around it, you have lots of flexibility as to how you put them together, how you combine them, what you do with them. And again, individually they would make really nice ornaments. So that's another, yeah, I love the concept behind this. They've got, I'm pretty sure they've got a Halloween one that has the same concept. I don't have that in my stash. All right, the next one, this is just going to highlight, actually I'll pull this one back out. So the copyright on that Little Bits of, I don't know when that is, but it's fairly recent. It's in like the last 2, maybe 3 years, is this one. This one is a little older than that. So as with many designers, they sometimes update how they're printing their charts. So this is an older one that I have. This one actually, so this one is called the Alpine Garden, and I think this is actually the very first one drawn thread that I got. It came with the supplies. So this is kitted out with needlepoint ink silks. So the LNS that I got it for, the threads came with it. So I don't know, I haven't gone to look. There's one charm here and these NPIs. So that's how I got mine. That's when I was at my LNS, that's just how it arrived. Again, I have not looked specifically on the drawn thread to see if it's still coming as a fully kitted or whether it's just the chart. But again, that's the Alpine Garden. I will put a link to the drawn thread site where you can look at all of their charts. I don't know that, I haven't specifically heard of any of them that have gone out of print, but I don't necessarily keep track of all of them. This is the Butterfly Garden. I will say you should be able to tell from that. You can only imagine how many colors are called for in that. I will say she does tend to stitch her models quite frequently with needlepoint ink silk, which, you know, can add up quite heftily. but she certainly does have DMC conversions. So those are options as well. So that's the Butterfly Garden one. This is Welcome Christmas. Yes, I have a Christmas thing going on. And from the next several, so this is the Winter Garden. I would say 75% of her garden charts appeal to me. I'm trying to practice restraint. I don't have all of the ones that I like. That's part of that's part of my stash budgeting for this year, is that I'm trying to the reward for finishing things is then allowing myself to purchase something to add to the stash, but I have to finish things before I'm trying to do that. Now, I know I've already said I'm planning on ordering those extra needle pullers. That's coming anyway, because I'm going to need those, because I'm planning on doing a lot of canvas work over the next 5 years. So this is the Winter Garden. I love this one. Love, love, love it. I have the Summer Garden. Love it. I do not have the Spring Garden, and I do not have the Autumn Garden. I don't remember if that's because I don't necessarily like them as much, or if I just haven't gotten around to it. But so far, I'm at this point in time only planning on keeping, so far in the stash, having the winter and the summer ones. This is the Wildflower Garden. So as these last three ones have shown, yeah, give me a really nice gardeny floral scene and put a house in it, and I'm probably going to have a problem. This is Christmas cards. Yeah, houses, all Christmas themed, Christmas words. Love them all. Love them all. Each card is only 60 by 90, so again, not too terribly a large a stitch. This one actually uses a combination of Dinky Dyes silks and NPI. Now, probably the Dinky Dyes, again, you'd have to check them out, because some Dinky Dyes are not as variegated as others. And do not ever... if you want to make it more of a solid color, don't hesitate. Again, if you go back and you look at my January cottage that I finished, there were two over-dyed flosses that were called for in that chart. I converted it to DMC. In fact, I converted them to the same DMC and stitched them solid, and I love how it looks. So if you're hesitant, sort of saying like, oh my goodness, it requires all these things and they're over-dyes and whatever, hey, some of them look just as well if you change them to a solid. The Joys of Christmas. Joy to the World is one of my favorite Christmas carols. And so having six charts that all have the word joy on them, all Christmas themed, right up my alley. In this one, again, when I bought it, it came with all of the beads for it. So again, I don't know if this is how it comes packaged to all of the stores. I just know where I got it from, the beads came with it. Because, you know, you just can't have too many Christmas themed ones. This is called the Holly and the Ivy. The words that are around there are not the Christmas Carol. It says, bring in the holly, the ivy, the pine, the spruce, and the fir tree together entwine. So If you're thinking it's just because it's called the Holly and the Ivy that the words around that form this border are part of the Christmas Carol, they are not. And then this is called the Cloister Garden. And again, this is one from the LNS that I got it from. It came kitted up with the NPIs. Again, so I don't know if that still is the case for this. I will say that this is an older chart because I can tell by the cardstock. But again, you should be able to see directly on the Drawn Thread website how they're selling it these days. Now, I got this one because I really think they're pretty. I don't know how, like, I wouldn't mind stitching them. We all know how well I'm doing about finishing. So this is called Treasured Tools. So a needle case, a scissor holder, and I feel like, oh yeah, needle pocket and scissors envelope. There you go. Again, those are my colors. I think it would be lovely. I'd enjoy the stitching, and 27 years after I finish stitching, we'll see if I got it changed into a fully finished object. I chuckle about that because one of my plans for this year is to do better about changing things from finished stitching into fully finished objects. But we'll see how well I do on that. Anyway, so that is sort of a run through of some of the charts that I have in my collection. Like I say, I really enjoy their garden themed ones. There's tons of them with all different themes. Yeah, like Dina from Half Stitch Cross Stitch, she finished one last year where I looked at it and went, ugh, I want to stitch that one too, but I've told myself that I can't purchase that chart until I've stitched one of these and then I can finish that one. They do have all sorts of other topics that they do. I don't tend, they do have Halloween related items. I don't have any of those in my stash. But again, I will link you to the Drawn Thread website where you can look at all of the charts that they've got available. You know, sampler styles like this one. Yeah, like there's the Takata ones. Like they've got some samplery ones. They've got the garden ones. They've got all sorts of different ones. So if nothing else, go to the site, have a little gander, and see if there's something there that you enjoy. And with that, I think I've covered everything I've got for you this week. I know that the videos have been coming up later than usual. The uploading and the processing have been taking an inordinate amount of time. I don't know what's going on there. Again, I was talking with a friend of mine last week, and she was like, yeah, I haven't gotten to it yet because it came up really late. I'm like, yeah, and the answer was I loaded it up. So normally, you know, my thing is I record them, I get them started processing and uploading, and then I go make myself dinner, and all those things are going on. But last week, I was getting ready for bed, and I'm like, it's still plugging along. So I set it to publish without me, and then I went, hopefully when I get up in the morning, it'll have published and everything will be fine. And it was, but I don't think it got published until really into the wee hours of Monday morning. So we'll see how this one goes. Hopefully it will get up there a little bit earlier, but if not, have faith it's coming. And with that, I hope everybody had a really great week. I hope everybody is staying healthy and staying safe. There's lots of stuff going on with our lovely, ever, problematic little COVID issues. So I hope everybody's being careful. And I hope that you are finding some time to stitch. And I look forward to seeing you next week and see what I've gotten started for next week's video. Have a great week, guys.